Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Newt. Appreciate it. Well, again, Keith Manier, and humbled to be here. I appreciate the ask on a lot of levels. And I have had the privilege of pastoring Grace Fellowship now for 13 years. Arrived at a church that had existed previously before me for 11 years. Most people don't know that, but it existed for 11 years. Had climbed to 200 and then was beginning to die, and was about at my very first weekend in July of that year was 52 people. I think that included 7 students who were under the age of high school students or below. And I had worked, as Newt said, as a chemist in the marketplace for about 5 years for a big corporation, for the Limited Incorporated. I worked for the home office of Bath & Body Works and R&D, doing stuff for them. And then I had worked for a startup firm after that for another 3 years. My wife and I, with what is now Encompass World Partners, had spent 5 months in Cambodia, and we were thinking about being full-time missionaries. And I tell you that because all in about 2 weeks, I had 3 opportunities come in front of me. I was asked to fill the platform at this church with some other folks in our area of this church that was struggling. Went and preached there a few times. And they said, hey, would you be interested, as we're doing a pastoral search, to interview for this job? And I said, I don't know, I guess, sure, I'll pursue it. And so at the same time, the company I was working for, the startup firm, somebody had found out about me, and I was being recruited by a recruiter for a job that I didn't know at the time was Kimberly-Clark in Wisconsin, which is a really great company that does some pretty incredible stuff. And then at the same time, Kelly and I got approved, my wife and I got approved to be full-time missionaries if we wanted to go with Encompass. So I interviewed with this church on a Sunday, interviewed with Kimberly-Clark in Wisconsin on a Tuesday, and by Friday got offered all 3 opportunities. Do I want to go be a full-time missionary in Cambodia? Do I want to be a pastor of a church? Or do I want to go work for Kimberly-Clark? Let's just suffice it to say the Kimberly-Clark opportunity was certainly financially the most lucrative and probably in many ways the most stable. But we really sought not only God, but people we trusted, people we loved. And we decided to take this church for about a little less than half of the money Kimberly-Clark was offering. I'd not been to seminary yet. I had been working in the marketplace, never been a pastor, and I was just about to turn 26. I had no idea what the heck I was doing and what was going to go on, and now sit here today, 13 years later. I think we had about 3,600 people this weekend, around 6,000 for Easter. We have 3 campuses. We're about to open up a 4th. It's in the form of an extension. Went from 1 staff member to 60 staff members. And by God's grace, we've seen 1,200 folks baptized, I think, something like that, and been able to really see God do some pretty incredible things. I don't say that because bigger is better. I say that to say my experience has been to go from a church that was really small to a church that's not so small and have to figure it out along the way, with a lot of different things in the middle of that. And so what I want to spend really the bulk of my time doing with you is telling you what I would say are some of the crucial decisions that we have made along the way of that 13-year journey. Not all of these were made in the first 2, 5, 6 years. In fact, some of them have been made in the last couple years. But I want to tell you some of the biggest crucial decisions, and then I'm going to tell you a couple of what I would also say are some of the biggest mistakes. And amidst all that, I really hope that you hear this. A verse that's been really important to us and our team has been Proverbs chapter 21, verse 31. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 31. And it says, prepare the horse for battle, but victory belongs to the Lord, or victory rests with the Lord. And that verse encapsulates 2 really critical principles. Prepare the horse for battle is our job, our responsibility, the part that we own. Victory rests with the Lord is God's responsibility or God's work, God's fruit. And so there's 2 phrases that we think about on that. One side of that is hard work. One side of that is huge faith. Prepare the horse for battle is hard work. Victory belongs to the Lord is huge faith. Now this is really critical because what I want to tell you is there's a lot of churches that have similar models and do similar things to what we do. But for whatever reason, God just hasn't blessed numerically the way we've blessed it. And so I want to make abundantly clear that what I'm about to communicate to you isn't because I believe we've tapped into some magic formula It's not because I'm a genius. It's not because our team is perfect. It's not because the preaching or the music or the style is better than anyone else's. There are elements where I would say God has used those things, but I want to say that the hero of the Grace Fellowship story, let me make this clear, is God. God has brought the increase. God has done what He has done. I was just preaching on parenting this weekend, and I talked about own what you can, pray for what you can't. Own for what you can, pray for what you can't. But don't you dare not own what you can. And what we would say is on our staff and on our team, we're going to do the hard work of preparing for battle. So what I'm going to describe to you is under the context of God is the one who brought the increase and brought all the fruit, okay? God is the one who victory came with. I'm talking to you about 10 things we did on our side of hard work. I am not ignoring God's will. I'm not ignoring God's providence. I'm not ignoring God's sovereignty. I'm talking about our side of the equation. Is that fair? Is that a fair pretext to have most of this conversation under? Because I've been in environments like this enough times where it can feel like I'm saying this is all man-made, human-made, effort, decision, business savvy. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about prepare the horse for battle, which is on our part, right? The same way, again, parenting. I can't make my 4 kids love Jesus, but I can expose my kids to Jesus pretty darn consistently. And I can model, teach, train, and discipline in that direction, right? So I'm going to talk about these things that we've gone after or we've had to navigate as Proverbs chapter 21, verse 31 has been a backdrop. I'll see how many of these I get through this afternoon or this morning before we go through this afternoon. But I'm going to go through these. I'll probably talk about a few of them, and then I'll pause and give you a chance to ask questions about them along the way. And I really hope that as I go through these, you can see that these are not size dependent. These are decisions that you just have to choose to make in any church, and I would say in any organization, okay? So here's one that we made early on, back when we were 52 people, huge decision, and it was this. We were going to have a high expectation of our volunteer culture. We were going to have a high expectation of our volunteer culture. When I say that, everybody goes, oh, big church, easy to find great volunteers. No, 52 people, you had to find people that would work. And we made the decision early on, we're not just settling for heartbeats. We're not just settling for heartbeats and willing bodies. We would rather have something not done at all than to have it done poorly. We just made that decision. And we made the decision to say we are going to hold our volunteers to a worship excellence level mindset when it came to volunteering. We created a volunteer manual. We trained our people on volunteers. We started huddles when we were small. We met with our people. We trained our people. We expected them to show up on time, find replacements, understand this is not their idea, understand they're replaceable. We said from day one, high volunteer culture. We have churches in Central Ohio and around Central Ohio that come and visit Grace all the time. All the time. We had one last weekend, church in the area, about 100 people. They came, they shadowed us, they shadow our team, they walk through it. We've had other pastors in our world, names of churches you would know, guys like Jeff Bogue and some of their team that have come, and Clancy Cruz and other guys that have come. And almost without a doubt, one of the single first comments I get from pastors and team leaders is, your volunteer culture is incredible. You will see our volunteers show up early. You will see our volunteers own their responsibility. You will see our volunteers understand what they are called to. And we started that early on. And we started that unapologetically. And we weren't afraid. It's going to sound terrible. We weren't afraid to fire volunteers. We weren't. We weren't afraid to hold them accountable. We weren't afraid to raise the bar. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Volunteers, as much as anything that they want clarity. They want to know what is expected of them. They also want to know what they're doing, how it fits into your overall vision. And if you are able to communicate to them, this is what you are allowing us to do, And this is why you're so critical to it, and this is exactly what we want you to do. I have found, I think Andy Stanley's right about this, I have found being clear with people is just as important, if not more important, than being correct with people every time. I have no problem admitting that we're going to make mistakes and fail and screw up, but we want to be clear with expectations and what's going on. And so clarity, what role you play, how that looks, not afraid to make big asks. And so I have staff members now who were volunteers that, incredible asks I made of them at the time. And I remember saying to them, now I'll look back and I'll be trying to get them to motivate their volunteers about stuff. And I'll sit down with them. I'll say, do you remember what I asked you to do as a volunteer? You remember? Let's talk about some of the things. I'm like, doesn't that seem crazy now? I'm like, but you did it and you believed in it. Why? And we'll talk through that and how that happens and how they pull that potential out of people. I read a book one time that said people need basically 3 things to stick around at your church outside of if they're Christians or if they're seeking or how God's wooing them. But 3 things it talked about. 1 was 1 deep relationship. 2 was 7 fringe relationships. So 1, a lot of times family or deep friendship or deep relationship. 2 was 7 fringe relationships. And then the 3rd thing they said was they need something to do. They need something to do. And I have learned that if people start to pull out of the ministry they're serving in, it's normally their first step to being out the door. Give them something to do. Make them understand that it's valuable. Help them understand the standard. And lovingly be patient and kind with them as you're having that conversation, but hold them to a high volunteer culture. Okay, I'm going to go to the second one, and then I'll pause after this because I think these two relate well enough that if there are questions or thoughts, we can press it. Here's the second one that I want to tell you. We decided really early on that we were going to give more thank yous than we were asks. We were going to give you more thank yous than we were asks. I decided this personally, and we decided this as a leadership team. I remember having a conversation with a man who had raised 3 incredibly godly boys. And I said to him, what did you do? Because I want my son, at the time I had 1 son, I want my son to end up like your 3 sons. And he tried to, oh, God's grace, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, yeah. What'd you do? Like, yes, I've read Chronicles. Really godly people can raise really bad kids, really bad parents can raise really godly kids. But what part of it did you own? He gave me some things, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, I worked really hard to try to say 10 positive things for every 1 negative thing. I tried to tell him 10 positive things for every 1 negative thing. Well, I thought, well, what a great principle. How do we figure out how to adopt that in our church? And what is a way that looks? Well, say thank you more than you ask them for things. How about we say thank you for their consistent giving before we complain to them about the fact that we're not hitting budget? So if you're hitting budget, take the time on purpose to just say in your service, I want to thank you all for being generous in the way you're being generous. Here's some things you can go on. What if you thanked volunteers before you asked volunteers? What if you thanked staff before you put another thing on their plate? What if you thanked your wife before you told her the sacrifice you were about to have? What if you thanked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So here's a practice I have. If my assistant was sitting here, she would verify it. It's like clockwork. Every single week, I'm going to write 2 handwritten notes. Every week. Every week, I have postcards from Grace Fellowship. I get out. It literally takes me 2.5 minutes. I write the 2 handwritten thank you cards. I put the names of who they are on her desk. She addresses them, and she sends them off. And every single week, like clockwork, I write those. And as much as it is great that those people get it, and by the way, the larger the church has got, the more that's meant to people. Because a lot of times people have been disconnected. They don't know me. They don't see me. But it's been a practice I have carried out. And if anything, more than even thanking the people, I am reminding myself of the importance of thanking people and what that looks like in our services, and our staff, and our team, so on and so forth. We have a high culture of evaluation on our team, okay? But here's what I've learned, and think about this in parenting or any area of life. A high culture of evaluation without a high culture of celebration becomes oppressive. I'll say that again. A high culture of evaluation without a high culture of celebration becomes oppressive. And I learned about myself that one of my weaknesses was that I am not naturally great at celebrating things. I do not lead insecurity well. It's a weakness. I've had to learn how to get better at it and how to do it with our team. But one of the things that happens is that we work hard to thank our team. So we have 2 all-staff meetings every month. One of them is the last Tuesday of the month. And at this all-staff meeting, it's called Propel, and it's about us moving forward and how we go forward, and I could give you the framework of what it looks like. But in that framework, every single month is a time of celebration and thank you to our team, where I, by name, talk to staff members in front of the whole team. By department, thank a department for a thing that they pulled off. Oftentimes, in fact, we had to switch it up because I'm out of town for something in Texas next week. We just did it Tuesday, or it was yesterday. Is that yesterday? Did it yesterday. And at all staff yesterday, I had gotten a couple letters this week from people in the church saying how blessed they are about things that are going on at Grace. And I printed off the letter, and I brought it to staff, and I read it. Line by line, told them this is what went on, told them this is about, and I looked at them, and I highlighted, see what this person said? This person commented on groups. That's your team. Thank you, groups team. Hey, they commented on children's ministry and our baby dedication process. That's your team. Thank you. They commented on the weekend service. That's you guys. Thank you. And read through it and said, this email was addressed to me, but it's to our team. Thank you. And to make sure every week, and sometimes they'll say, Keith, that's just the part of the meeting where you thank us. It's just institutionalized in your brain. That's what you do. And I always pause at them and I say, my date night with my wife is institutionalized because it's a priority on my heart. I am doing it every single month on purpose because thank you is critical to be able to keep things moving forward in a culture where the asks are hard. You're going to make a lot of asks of people. You're going to ask a lot of things. What would it look like to make sure that you had thank you more than your ask? So I'm going to pause, okay? High level expectation for a volunteer culture. Thank yous more than asks. What right off the bat questions or thoughts do you want to press into around those just specific to as we get started? Yeah.
I have a question. So, say you came into a church where they had a culture of low expectation.
Okay.
And you want to help kind of transition into a higher expectation and calling your volunteers into like a deeper place in their volunteerism. What would be some thoughts or ways to actually take those steps?
Yeah, okay, so and I'm not asking you to say this, but some of it is you got to know your role, right? Like, so if you're the senior leader, well, then it becomes on you to figure that out. If you're not, you have to figure out how to lead within your team and win it. But a couple things I would say. You got to win leaders and win influencers. You have to model it yourself. And you have to figure out a way to explain why biblically this needs to be in the DNA of our church. So, for example, what you just described was the exact environment I came into. Low expectation of volunteers, low importance of a volunteer culture, all that kind of stuff. I think my 3rd or 4th sermon at the church was on the idea of excellence as worship unto the Lord. And to talk about what that meant for the whole church, including the volunteers. And very early on, I was winning my leadership team to that concept, so we were going to resource it. So let's pretend you're a student ministry person. Well, number one, you need to be excellent and high at what you do personally, but then you need to win the people that are your influencers in your area to it. You need to demonstrate how it wins, and then you need to try to move it up the food chain. If you're the senior leader, you need to figure out how to start making it a part of the conversation within your church. So model, win influencers, and talk about the biblical reality of how it plays out. Those are 3 really critical things that I would say you've got to figure out how to do. And then as you begin to implement it, continually selling the why. Continually selling the why. Continually selling the why. You can never say the why enough. People hear the what so much louder than the why. Keep telling them the why. Keep telling them the why. Keep telling them the why. Does that help, or you want to press that more?
That helps.
Okay? Around these two things, other questions that you want to throw out or press on?
I think new.
Yeah, new.
How about Sunday or the whole church? How do you think then?
The whole, well, okay, so a couple different ways. So Sunday would be a great example would be, Grace, we want to let you know that we were able to just send $20,000 to Houston, Texas because of the hurricane stuff that went on. This is the relief that we were able to do. This is what we're doing. This is how we're sending teams. And we want to thank you because your generosity week in and week out allows us to be in a position to do that. That's an example. We preached in July because this is an aside for free. I wasn't even going to say this, but it's for free. We really focus to think about in the summer preaching for depth more than any other time of the year because most of the time in the summer the people that are coming to your church are believers already. Very few guests are visiting in the summers. And so we do things sometimes that people wouldn't think make sense in the summer. We do it in the summer. So our big volunteer push is in the summer because it's normally your core people. So we did a big volunteer push in July, and we got like 500 new volunteers. So after we did that and implemented it, we stood up in front of the church a couple months ago. We asked you to step up. 500 new people across all 3 campuses said that they want to volunteer. 270 of those are already plugged in. Thank you for those of you that wanted to own your church. Those kind of things. And then we would target it. So every year after the end of the year, our fiscal year, I send a video thank you video to the top 50 givers in our church. Hey, thank you for your continued investment and generosity in our church. Staff, I might do the same kind of thing. Grace group leaders might target those kind of groups as well. If our student ministry team just had a huge win, I might get on video or go thank them in their department meeting. Stuff like that. Those would be examples. Does that help? Okay? Somebody over here?
On the top 50 givers, do you read the list? And
By name and their
coming in
amounts.
20%?
Yeah, and for the record, I know those people's names, but I don't know their amounts. I don't know their order. Our finance team gives me a list in alphabetical order of who those people are, and we want to celebrate those people. So, yeah.
I know things grew fast for you.
Yeah.
Your story, but I think when people are making a transition from what I would call what churches, smaller churches call family,
Yep.
to excellence and accountability. Family means great grace. I'll use all the terms that are often used by the people who really push back. Did you have any kind of, say, by year 2, 3, 4, some big pushback about this kind of stuff? Did you have people leave? How many times were you called an unloving pastor?
Sure.
Because those things happen to me.
Yeah, sure.
So it just negotiating that in a way where you can look in the mirror and before God say with a clear conscience that I have led well and led in a Christ-like way.
Yeah, I'll try to answer your question in several ways, and if I don't get at the heart of it, let me know. But ultimately, I'm going to say something that's not going to seem like it makes sense, but one thing to keep in mind is the difference between people who are first-generation builders and second-generation contributors in any organization, okay? And what you're really looking for when you're trying to do a restart or you're trying to grow something, you're trying to get something off the ground, you're looking for first-generation builders. And first-generation builders are people who buy into the vision and are willing to work at a level and a capacity that accountability doesn't chain them because they feel the heart of the vision. But to do that, you have to be willing to exhaust yourself with one-on-one conversations of the why. So, did I get pushback over the years? Yes. Do I still get pushback? Yes. I had the same conversation 250 times about music. Why so loud? Why so dark? Why so this style? Why? And lovingly in my office, Kathy, I'm picturing a woman right now. Kathy, I love you. I'm at this church because folks like you stuck around and believe in it. This is who we've been. Let's talk about what we think. Do you agree this is like what we could ideally see? If we, Is that what you want? Is that what you believe in? Is that what you're, yeah. Okay, well, we think this is the best path. Here's the why. What, do you trust my heart that I'm seeking God? Do you trust our leadership? All that to say is lots of one-on-one over conversations. So be willing to do the hard work. Be willing to tell the why in those conversations over and over. Treating each one of them lovingly, and that you're not trying to beat them up or force them. But secondly, to remember that your job is to follow God, not listen to the people. And there's a difference. And so you love the people best by listening to God and loving God. And if God's telling you this is the direction to go, and you need to know that's what God's telling you to do. And so I just learned to be okay with the tension. A phrase I learned early on was you have to choose who you lose. Be okay with that. And so there was have the same conversation over and over, be patient, be loving, tell the why. There was be okay that you're going to follow God and you're going to choose who you lose. Then there was the reality that I worked incredibly hard to realize that the best way to win people was for me to personally get in front of them. So I tell this to our campus pastors because I want this for them. Gosh, probably until we were about 1,000. If you came to our church and you were a male and we found out you came, I reached out to you to sit down with you personally. I sought people like white on rice to go sit down with them because I knew the best way to win them to the vision and to make them first-generation builders was to go sit with them. Give them a chance to do all the interrogation with me in person. And so you got to be willing to do the work, right? Those took a lot of time and conversation. And am I answering your question? Those would be some of the things.
I just know a lot of pastors, this is my experience, that really want to be change agents and push forward. You get blowback.
Yep.
And if you're real tender-hearted, or if that bothers you a lot, you'll back off.
Yeah, and I'll come to something in a little bit that addresses that. But he who goes through the wall first gets the bloodiest. And if you want to go through the wall to change, you're going to get bloody. Leaders lead. You know, sometimes I'll sit in rooms with staffs or rooms like this, and people will say, "Well, how'd you do that?" You led. You made the call. You told them the why. You took the arrows. You cannot go where I think God oftentimes wants to take you and not get bloody and not be willing to have hard conversations. The majority of the people, the majority of the 52 that were there when I got there are still there. Those that have moved away for various reasons, like they've left. And there were a few that left, but in general, most of them stayed. And we've had to do this twice because one of our campuses was a merger of another church that came to us and said, would you come and have this conversation? And we said, yeah, and we met with them, and they had, again, about 50 people. This was 2 years ago, last weekend. And they had 50 people, and they were dying, and they came to us and they talked to us, and we sat down with them, and we said, here are all the things that are going to change. You got to be hip to this. I remember one of them was they would let people come from this door, from their parking lot that was close, and walk right past their children's ministry. And so we were in this meeting, and this was before the merger was official, and we said, hey, if we come here, you're not going to be allowed to enter that door anymore. You're going to have to go around to this door. And they said, why? And we said, because when there's children's ministry, it's a safety hazard. And we want to be able to make sure we reach children, and to do this well, we need to protect them, and you can't enter that door. And she said, we don't have any kids. And I was sitting on a stool, and I stood up, and I looked at her, and I said, but we will. And because we will, we need to lead towards where we're going, not where we are. So we need to make the change. 2 years later, that campus just this week was 221 people with 26 kids. Praise God. And there was change that had to take, even in, you're going to have to walk a different way around the building to go, stuff like that. And then they heard that, had to hear that, process it. So yeah, you got to be willing to have those conversations. And you can feel like, oh my gosh, here's another thing I'd say. If you're going to kill something, bury it with dignity. Don't, A board member, yeah. You know, never forget, no one's wrong on purpose. People are trying. People want to get things right. There are really faithful, godly people. I would do everything I can. I still do everything I can to thank the people that were there when I got there. Almost every Christmas or Easter, I'll walk up to one of them or a couple, and I'll put my arms around them, and I'll say, look around. This is because you were willing to do what you were willing to do. And so when you're going to change something, bury it with dignity. You know, they say leaders have to be willing to think about 4 things. Leaders have to be thinking about what needs to be created, what needs to be killed, what needs to be fueled, and what needs to be ignored. I'll say that again. Leaders have to think about what to create, what to kill, what to fuel, and what to ignore. When you're trying to transition a church, sometimes the best decision is learning what to ignore, what you don't give oxygen to. It'll die on its own if it's unhealthy. So if you show up and just try to light everything on fire, you're going to be a jerk. Don't. So transition it by killing what you're going to kill, bury it with dignity, and then learn to ignore stuff. Some stuff will just die on its own. That knitting ministry that needs to go away will probably die on its own. I don't mean this crassly, but it'll die when she dies. Right? Like, it'll go away. You don't need to be rude about it. Let her and the other 3 ladies do it until you just don't promote it. Don't talk about it. You don't got to dishonor her and, we're killing knitting. You sound like a jerk when you do that. Like, there's no need to do that. So learning what to ignore in that transition is huge too. Somebody else around volunteers or thank yous. Thoughts or questions on this? Yeah,
Do you spend money, resources in order to say thank you? How do you come up with that kind of a plan?
Yeah, so for example, we do a giant volunteer celebration every year. It's like a $10,000 line item in the budget. It's a party. And we celebrate the snot out of our volunteers. We give them stuff. We do giveaways. And we've given away TVs and shirts and golf outings and do a big thing. And again, size appropriate. We did that when we were smaller, right? Most of our teams have in their budgets ways to honor their volunteers, to thank them. Gift cards. They'll do things if they're doing a volunteer team night and how that looks. So yeah, resourcing the people to make sure that can happen. When we did the volunteer handbook, we were a small church, but we spent some money to have it printed well. Put it in a binder, not a 3-ring binder, but like a spiral binder that we gave to them. It was on legit beyond cardstock. What you spend declares value, right? And so we spent money on this thing to say that it matters, stuff like that. But we definitely will resource celebrating in that regard. We do a thing once a quarter, what's called a hospitality event, where you just come to church and you get something free just for being there. Anything from a Chick-fil-A sandwich to a Krispy Kreme donut to cupcakes to we bring ice cream trucks in. And we just literally say, when you're on your way out, we just want to thank you for being here. We love it. You go to a lot of places today, but the fact that you chose to come to church this weekend, we just want to thank you for making the choice to be here. We think it's a great choice for you and your family. Something for you on the way out. And hospitality events, we just plan in the life of the church every quarter. And they're a blast. People sit around, hang out, and then inevitably someone will take a picture of it. We have Saturday night services and Sunday services at one of our campus, and you can't do Chick-fil-A on Sunday because they're closed. But you can do Chick-fil-A on Saturday. And so all the Saturday people, are taking pictures on Instagram. Look, I got Chick-fil-A. And then the next day everyone's mad at us because they didn't get Chick-fil-A. But we're like, well, that's why you should go to Saturday. We love you more if you go to Saturday anyway, so go. So yeah, we definitely spend money on it. Other questions or thoughts about this? Okay, third one. This is going to sound no duh, but it's a big miss that a lot of teams make. Creation of a real spiritual development environment for your team, your leadership team. Creation of a real spiritual environment for your team. I regret to say that it was only probably about 3.5, 4 years ago that we've really started to get this right the way that I want us to get this right as a team. We have a meeting every month now that's all staff. It's called Renew. The entire focus of the meeting is us to come together and make sure that our hearts are continually being renewed and healthy before the Lord. And so at that meeting, it consists of a number of things. Normally it consists of some scripture that we give them, then we give them time to go off and read and journal about it. It's get all the staff, everybody go read 1 Timothy, whatever, go journal about it, come back. Sometimes we talk about it, sometimes we don't. It consists of someone on our staff always giving their testimony. Always giving their testimony. We remind each other that before we could ever have been used by God in this way, we had to be renewed by God. God's more in love with who we are than what we do. So we remind ourselves that everybody gives a we have testimony time. We do prayer time. Prayer time in groups, prayer time as a whole team, prayer time in departments. So it's breakdown, 2-3 people, go pray as this looks. We sing together. We have a time of singing together around song that we make sure. We celebrate birthdays and anniversaries where we say, God graciously brought these people into the world. God graciously is sustaining their marriage. We need to pray for them to make sure that they're healthy. And so every single month, we make these things happen in a fashion where we come together as a team. Where part of this came from was our staff, about 7 of us on staff were down at the Village Church, Matt Chandler's church in Dallas, Texas. And we were down there for a thing, and Matt's staff was getting ready to go through their equivalent of this meeting. And we were meeting with him, my executive pastor and a couple other guys were meeting with Matt and his executive pastor and another guy. And he told us that from the time they were 4 team members on, they did this kind of thing culturally, where they made sure that they, on purpose, every month had a focused time where they prayed, read scripture, sang together. And over the course of the first, 8-10 years of our church, we prayed as a staff and we prayed before meetings and we checked on each other's hearts. But we didn't declare the value as a team that I am as concerned about your spiritual health as much as anything. Our organization has a high forward movement value. It runs at a fast pace, has a high culture of evaluation. It's not long till you become a professional more than you become a Christian. And we said we have to stop that. And I stood in front of the staff, I stood in front of the elders, and I said, I want to apologize that I have not led the hearts of us spiritually as well as I could have the last however many years. And I said, here is an example, one example, amongst many examples of how that's going to change in our culture. And so maybe you have a staff member that's just there's 2 of you. Maybe there's 4 of you. Maybe it's just you and your leadership team. Maybe your leadership team is all volunteers. Okay, beyond your devotion that you give at the meeting, or beyond that we're going to open in prayer and close in prayer, what do you really do to cultivate the spiritual health of your team? Spiritual health of your team is critical to the health of the people they're reproducing, right? Healthy people reproduce healthy people. I believe in this so much, I made my pastors and directors go to counseling last year. Made them. Not because they all needed it, but I made them. Because even if they needed it, they should have gone anyways, or if they didn't think they needed it, they probably found out they needed something, and that included me. I'd never been in counseling myself, and I said, I'm going to go to counseling because I'm going to lead it. And so all of our pastors and directors, we all had to go to counseling 8 sessions in 2016 as a staff. We all had to do it. And here's the truth. About half of them are still in counseling. And they're becoming healthier, and they're leading healthier teams. So they all had to go to see a Christian counselor to continue to be healthy. And that was a focus of me saying to them, I care about your heart. In our one-on-one staff meetings, a part of the time we run this is for free, but I'll tell you what, in our staff meetings, our one-on-one staff meetings are around 4 C's. Connecting, commending, coaching, and correcting. I'll say those again. Our one-on-one staff meetings are around 4 C's. Connecting, Coaching, commending, and correcting. Connecting, the reason that this comes up for this conversation is connecting is asking them, if you're managing someone, how are you doing spiritually? What's God teaching you? How can I be praying for you? How's your marriage? Any struggles with your kids? I tell our staff members in onboarding, if your direct report is not checking on your spiritual pulse, they are failing you. Because we care about your health spiritually. It's in our values that we want you to be healthy spiritually. And so we spend time cultivating that. Just for the record, to finish those. So connecting, how you doing, what's going on, anything I can help you with. Commending is, hey, I want to tell you some great things you did. Proud of you. Again, trying to keep the culture of celebration high. Coaching, I see something you're doing, I'm coming alongside you. Correcting is when I've been coaching you long enough that you're not changing, this has moved to a different level, which is this is corrective, and if it's not corrected, there's going to be a different conversation had. And they don't have that corrective conversation until they've had a chance to be coached and until we tell them this is now a corrective conversation. Yeah.
How long is that meeting?
Depends department to department. My direct reports, it's about an hour. Yeah, it's a pretty strong commitment. My direct reports, I have 4. Yeah. Most leaders wouldn't have more than 6. Probably somewhere between 2 to 6. And they might not all go every week 1 hour. Sometimes they might be less. But yeah, they're around that framework. And again, some of that for this conversation is to come back, how are you doing spiritually? So I had 2 one-on-ones yesterday. One of them, they're with my 2 campus pastors. And one of them, his name's Jake. He's newly married. He hasn't been married very long. And so we spent about 10 minutes. How are you and Courtney doing? What are you guys struggling with? What can we talk through about that? We talked about his marriage, right? I want him to be a healthy married guy. So my point is, we have to stop assuming if they work at a church or volunteer at a church that they are spiritually healthy. It's not true. We have to stop assuming that they're doing their spiritual disciplines because they work at a church. Not true. How are you checking on that, connecting to that, promoting that, encouraging that, making sure that you do it? And so when we first started what we now call Renew, we were probably a staff of about 19. And it was weird and awkward, and everybody thought they were going to hate it. And I can tell you this, it is one of the highlights of our month every month right now. Our people love it. We are so blessed by it. We cry. Oh, our testimonies, hearing the stories of people cry. When we sing together, when we pray together. I mean, whenever we break down and pray, it's like, all right, get the tissues out. People are going to start talking honestly. We're going to be real, and it's super valuable. And we're saying, guys, we've got to be healthy before the Lord. We've got to make sure we're defined by God. We've got to make sure we know God loves us more for who we are than what we do. And it's been beautiful and super, super powerful. And I regret, if I had a time machine, not causing it and starting that more from early on when I had key staff. Now, our elders meet once a month. I lead that. And we have a devotion time in that. We pray. But even that, we invite our elders when they can, the non-staff elders. We invite them to come to Renew. Come hang out with us and pray and sing and grow together. It's been super, super valuable. And you just can't assume the spiritual health of the people that you're working with. And it's your job to help create a culture where spiritual health is important. And it's being talked about and that people know that. So we wanted to make sure that we did that. So this idea of you are really connected to making sure people's health spiritually is there. And then I'll do one more, and then again I'll pause for more questions. Number 4 that I would say, preach like there are lost people in your church, even if there's not. Preach like there's lost people in your church, even if they're not. Sometimes in life you got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to declare what you want to be there before it's there. I'm not talking prosperity gospel nonsense. But if you want to become the kind of preacher or create the kind of environment or group leader or student ministry where people who are far from God can come and hear and connect and go. You can't talk like the only people you're talking to are people in the room who already know the gospel. You got to make the decision to say, we're going to preach like law. So you got to be willing at times to say things that you almost feel silly saying. So there's 42 people in the room, and you know that they all know Jesus. But you say, and Jesus was meeting with his disciples. His disciples, that's like his key men that he was training up. And everyone in the room's going, dude, we know who his disciples are. We know who his disciples are. We probably know more about his disciples than you do. Right? Like, no, but you're not saying it for them. You're saying it to get in the habit so that when someone finally does bring their brother, friend, cousin, neighbor to that church, you have learned how to speak in a way that makes sense. The other part of this is it's going to help you think about your sermon and what you're putting together, or your teaching and what you're putting together, in a way that is going to make sense to lost people and in a way that's going to make you a better evangelist personally. But you're thinking through, how do I preach to lost people as though they're not in the room? And again, it's weird, it's odd. It's when you're doing the thing for guests when there's no guests. But you're in the habit of figuring out what that looks like and how you go after that. And so how you think about your services, how you think about your content, how you think about your illustrations, how you think about the way you present your content, all that stuff, you have to preach as though there are lost people there, even if they're not there. You have to preach as though there's younger people there, even if they're not there. You got to lead in that direction. You got to put it out in front. You got to help people see that as you get in front of it. There are certain times where you should behave exactly the size and church that you are. There are other times where you need to behave bigger or different than you are. And with your preaching, you need to be willing to say, I'm preaching for people who do not yet know Christ at times in my messages. And I'm thinking about them, and I'm mindful of them, and I'm picturing that lost person who comes. Because I'll tell you what, you're going to be in a world of confusion and frustration if you're at a place where the lost person finally shows up and you haven't been prepared to think about what that looks like. And so you need to get in front of what that looks like as you're preaching. So let's take those two. Important spiritual emphasis of developing your core team and preach like lost people are there. All right? Questions that come out about this?
Can you provide some examples? Because if we've been really stuck in a church for a while and we're talking to church people, these words like disciple, what are some of those words that you had to rethink just to build a lexicon?
Well, disciple, sanctification, evangelism, any of those things, salvation. But you know, it's simple things that can feel throwaway. You like, hey, we're going to land in the book of Deuteronomy. Hey, if you don't know where the book of Deuteronomy is, go to your table of contents. It's actually the 5th book from the beginning of the book. You know, a lot of us here probably don't know. It's okay, cheat. You throw that bone even to the young believer or the non-Christian. It's things like that. Not assuming institutional church understanding. I don't say, if I'm going to say elders in a sermon, who are they? What are they? What's that about? You know, it's rethinking. If your non-Christian neighbor came, what's everything that you would cringe about? What's everything you would know they don't understand? So those are some simple examples, but it's really going through the framework of when you're putting together your message and learning what God is teaching you and what God's saying, asking, what does a non-Christian really believe about this? If a non-Christian came to hear this message, where is their heart? More than likely, based on your context, where's their heart? Right? So, again, last week I was preaching on your home is the primary environment for promotion of the gospel. God's goal out of the home, Christ-centric adults. Okay, what does the average non-Christian in our communities think about parenting? They don't think it's the primary environment for promotion of the gospel. They think it's the primary environment for promotion of happiness. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to get to that. Right? So it's just rethinking that all the time and then choosing words. Does that answer your question, Tim? And being meticulously disciplined on that, even when you know there's not yet Christians there, or not yet non-Christians there. Because they're not going to come. Your people don't feel confident bringing to them. You're trying to take out the cringe factors, the confusion factors of those conversations.
It's a pathway of spiritual formation at your church. So it's probably not going to happen on Sunday morning, although that's an important piece.
For sure.
So what do you do in addition to?
Yeah, I mean, the two things that we would say we want to get them connected to as soon as possible is to serving in our church and to groups. So we would say give them something to do, let them rub shoulders with other believers around mission and vision of what's going on in the church and serving. And then we would say get them in groups. And when we do our group's philosophy, we made the decision that oftentimes community and spiritual development in a group are at odds. Not always, but a lot of times. And we made the decision we're leading with spiritual development. So we're not saying you might not get friends. We're not saying that friends are bad. We're not saying, but that's not the purpose. So, for example, we tell people, like, if you can't come to group, like, more than, like, 75% of the time, don't come. It's an environment you're committed to. It's an environment we're developing you in, and then we're driving that conversation about that. And that was a change we made, because for a long time, we led with community. And when we led with community, we had lots of people who knew each other, but people were not moving forward spiritually the way we should have made. So, in that, for example, we went to every group ends with an action step, and every action step is evaluated the next week. Now, the action step might be different for the 15 people in the room. You might be a non-Christian there. We might be talking about prayer. Your action step might be to consider why you pray or don't pray. My action step might be to pray 4 times with my kids, right? But everyone's going to have an action step, and everyone the next week's going to be asked, how'd you do on your action step? I'm not beating up Johnny. You didn't do your action step. You're an idiot. Can't believe it. No. But we're saying the goal of this is transformation.
So they grow in Bible content understanding through groups.
Correct. And then there are also, we also do these things called focus groups, which are more what we would think of as topical or book study environments, walking as Jesus walked. Everything from Dave Ramsey to we're doing a 6-week study on Philippians. And those would be additional environments that are called focus group environments versus grace group environments that are offered. Yeah.
You mentioned the spiritual development of your team, and have you seen that maybe bleed out into other areas? Like, so you spiritually develop your team, and then they go to maybe their volunteers.
Oh yeah. A lot of the principles that have come out in Renew have begun to make their way into our leaders who lead volunteer teams. So, for example, some of our staff members have gone in their volunteer team meetings to having people give testimonies of their testimony, which is awesome. Because you have like 150 children's ministry workers with elementary kids, and they bring up Susie and Dave tell their story of how they came to know Christ. And then that encourages those people, and so things like that. So it's absolutely bled out, and it's really been critical to the team and how that plays out. Spiritual health of your team, preaching as though lost people are there even if they're not. Newt?
Simply to agree, we took a survey at the chapel, and the question made them answer how they know they're a Christian. And preaching as if they're non-Christians helps. I was embarrassed with some of the answers.
Yeah.
Preaching as if there's non-Christians helps Christians think through what is the gospel. I think many of them couldn't explain it in 3 minutes to a friend.
Sure.
So that's a great idea to make yourself do that all the time.
I agree, and would also say it also helps them think about if they are communicating whatever they're communicating to lost people, they have language, right? Because you're giving them the language to say by the language that you're saying. And they're like, oh yeah, I understand that. I can say that. That makes sense. You didn't use big, crazy, clever words for that. So I think it's also training them not only to understand the gospel, the basics, forgiveness, whatever it is, but I think it's also training them how to speak in evangelism. Other questions about either of these two? No? Okay, let's go to the next one. We decided that our marketing was going to be outreach to the community. We've never spent a dime on a mailer. We've never spent a dime on advertisements on the radio. We've never bought a billboard. We've never done anything like that. We said the way people are going to know that Grace Fellowship exists is we're going to love our community. We're going to love our community so much and so well that a couple things are going to happen. Number one, we're going to become known as a radically generous place, that people want to make us their first ask if they need help. Number two, we have a goal that we want to make such a difference that if we left, they'd have to raise the taxes. We want to be that influential in our community. To tell you a little bit where that ended or where that continues to go, just last year in where our biggest campus is, we were given an award by the city, which was an award they had never given a church before, which basically reflected a citizenship award in the city for what went on. A couple months ago, there was a flooding in our city, and there was a carnival thing going on, and all the people that were running the carnival, all their trailers got flooded, and so they lost the food that they had there and their clothes that they had there, and the first call that the mayor made to get help was our church. And our church took them food, took them clothing, and really tried to bless those people in a really intentional way. And we were able to get to that place because for years we have done what I would say, in a boxing analogy, the body blows of practically loving our community in very real ways. 3 things that we've done to do that, okay? And then I'll explain those. One is what we call impact events. 2 is what we call impact partners. And 3 is what we call just because. Impact events, impact partners, and just because. Impact events are 5 to 7 times a year where we are doing something on a grand level for the community simply to show we love them. I want to make this abundantly clear because I know that a lot of churches, this is a frustration of theirs. We do not throw the big parties that we throw for the city because we expect people to come to our church because of them. If that's why we did them, we are failing miserably. We do them to say to the church, we love you and we want this to be a great place to be, and we are contributing to that. So when we do an Easter explosion, we bring a helicopter and we drop eggs and bounce houses and food and the whole 9 yards, we are not expecting an influx of people to come from that to our church. We're not. We're asking ourselves, did we throw the best event for our community just to say to our community, we love you, we care about you, we're here. We do a giant single parent fair where we invite single parents from our community to come, and we do family photos, and we wash their cars, and we give them free school supplies, and we do free haircuts, and we do manicures and pedicures, and we do it all for free just to say, we love single parents. We want to value single parents. We are here to take care of you single parents. We'll do Cookie Crush, where we'll make thousands upon thousands upon thousands of cookies and have them delivered to the school district and just say, we want you to know we appreciate what you do. We love you, we care about you, and we go after that. And we made a decision that those impact events are far better marketing dollars to say to the community, we're here and we love you. And we just said, the win for those is that we do those well, we bless the community, we bless the people, not that we get people. Now, what we've seen is, the byproduct of that is, that people see that you love them long enough, when they start thinking about God and start thinking about church, they come. Because you're the first church they think about. But we don't do it. So no one gathers around on Tuesday morning after the single parent fair and goes, how many single moms showed up this week that we didn't know? It's not the win. The win is we honored those single moms. The win is we love those single moms. Now, we've had single moms that have come, and what we found is the more personal the event is and less party nature it is, the greater chance there are that people will come. But we're not throwing it so that they'll come. We're throwing it so we can love them. We're loving our neighbor as ourselves practically, and over time, the body blows that those people come. And so we do impact events. We have people that do that. It's incredible, and really, really, really awesome. Impact partners. Impact partners are where we work with groups and organizations outside of our church that we would say are winning in an area, and we are resourcing their winning. Okay? So we're going to resource them with money. We're going to resource them with people. We're going to come alongside their events. but we're resourcing winners. So I'm like, if you do this, I'm not throwing a stone. You have a vision for this, but we don't do a food bank because we have churches in our organizations in our community that are way better at a food bank than we can be. So we come alongside and help the winners who already do the food bank. And we resource the winners of the food bank. We have people that are stopping drug addiction. We resource those people. We come alongside them. And our philosophy with local partners and global partners is less partners, deeper investment, not more partners, shallower investment. We want to be a spear, not a shotgun. So we have less partners that we make sure we invest in deep. So before we commit to an area of the world or to a partner, we vet. And if we say yes, our yes is a big yes, and we push the chips in the middle of the table. So our impact partners are people that we think are killing it in areas, and we come alongside them. And then those are the people that we tell our grace groups to go partner with. Those are the people we partner with as a church. Those are the people when we do big rallies, we're coming alongside them. And so if you end up being a partner of Grace Fellowship, you don't get checks of $2,000, you get checks of $20,000. You don't get 4 people, you get 40 people. Because we push all of our chips in the table on those partners to make that happen. And we have made a difference in Columbus proper by coming alongside winners. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, not everybody wants to hear. Not all those organizations are inherently Christian. They're not. And we feel like when we partner with them, we get the privilege of not only bringing resources to the table, we bring the gospel to the table. We get to have conversations about the gospel with those people. And so we do that. So impact events, impact partners, then just because. Just because is a culture thing that we've built in to where we do things to our city or to organizations just because, no rhyme or reason, and we tell our church that's what's going on and we promote it that way. So let me give you an example. When we opened the Pickerington building almost 4 years ago, every single person that came to our church that day, we gave $10 to leave. We gave them an envelope with $10 in it. And in the envelope was $10 and a card that said, we just want to let you know that you are loved today just because. And what we coached our people was, hey, you seek God and find a way to bless people with that $10 this week. Starbucks, ice cream, donuts at your office, whatever it was. And you just do it just because. And so we did that. Just recently, another one of our campuses just did that. And we invested in it. Well, at the time, that was like 200 times 10, or 2,000 times $10 per person. Do the math. 20 grand. To say to the world, just because. And we started to see on Facebook and on social media, people who don't go to our church, who were just posting about, you won't believe what the person did for me. You won't believe, I got this card and just because. And we'll do the same thing for the city. We'll call the mayor. Mayor, what do you need? If we gave you $15,000, what would you do? Well, we really need a pavilion at these soccer fields. How much does it cost? About 12 grand. Done, just because. Tell them. Contact the city. What's another issue? People, we've got about 200 people that can't pay their water bills. Tell them, just because we're going to do it. And so randomly, we just pop these up. And we do them on a small level. We do them on big levels. We do them, and they're just random, different times, just because we want to make these happen, and we've just built them into our culture. And so just because impact events, impact partners have been a part of us saying that outreach events are going to be the way we tell the community we're here, we love them, and we make a difference. All right? I'll pause. Questions on that one? Questions on that one?
Many churches, people come from 30 miles away, 20 miles away. How do you get them to love the community that you're trying to focus on when they don't live there, they don't shop there, they don't really care about that little town or whatever? They just don't.
Yeah, it's hard. And a lot of it, depending on where a church is or an organization is, not everyone's created equal, right? Like some city places, people won't travel more than 5 minutes. Other rural places. I was just talking to a guy who was at a church the other day who people travel from like 26 different counties around them for about an hour away to get to his church, all around. And so doing something for that community, you have 26 different communities people care about. So some of it is you have to know. Some of it is what are you going to preach to, what are you going to lead to, what are you going to teach to. You can't make people care about anything, but you can put the exercise in front of them of we're going to demonstrate love in some way. Probably the biggest thing I would say about that is don't be paralyzed what you can't do about all of them. Pick one thing and do it. So you can't love all the communities perfectly well. Pick one and love it like you could love all of them, but just love that one. But you can't force people to love what they don't. The just because things, particularly if they're personal in nature and we've done different ways, those become opportunities for people to love where their space is, right? Like they can choose to bless whatever Starbucks or area they want to bless. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge when that plays out. Other thoughts around this idea of outreach and how that looks?
Dude, that one thought I'm having is, do you stick a huge chunk in your budget for this? Do you have people that just give, just say, 15,000, I'll write the check?
Yeah.
I mean, how does that all happen to fund? Because this is awesome, but
Yeah.
this is expensive.
Yeah, and let me remind you, we did this when we were small, okay? And it's morphed. So now, more of it is in our budget. Early on, more of it was personal asks. Hey, Gary, would you be willing to underride all the candy that we need for this event? What do you think it costs? Like $600. Yep. So some of it was that. Now, a lot of it's in our budget, and there's teams and staff. But again, we threw an explosion that 2,200 people came to when we were a church of 300. And we just made the ask. We just found the way to do it, and we led to it. And so some of it was congregational ask. Back then, we didn't even ask a guy. We just said, over the next 3 weeks, bring candy. Here's the bins. This is what we're looking for: pre-wrapped, unopened candy. These are the suggestions. Bring it, put it in these bins, make it happen. And then sometimes, you get people that come alongside and ask. But some of this, though, again, was a byproduct of a high volunteer culture. If we're going to do this well, we're going to go after it and put it out and put it in front. So it's been personal ask, congregational ask, budget, all of it. All of it. It just depended on the season and where we're at. And some of that's still true. But Cookie Crush, we're asking you, would you take a thing? We need 100 people to make 4 dozen cookies. And if you're one of those people, out in the lobby is a tag. Grab the tag. When all the tags are gone, we got all the cookies made that we want made. People leave service, go grab a tag, go. In the tag came with a bag. This is what you're delivering your cookies on. Here's the date. Here's the room that they're in. Peace. Go make your 4 dozen cookies, bring them back. And then that day, all of these 100 times 4 dozen cookies show up. They show up, and then there's a team with a plan on how they're going to be distributed, and they're going to go to the schools. Well, that didn't cost anybody anything but the cookie money, right? I mean, and people, superintendents, are writing letters to our church. Thank you for just caring about us in a simple way. People writing us personal notes. Hey, just that made our day. Our staff was so blessed. Been a hard season. And it wasn't that people came to our church, but we just were loving them. We just care about you. We want you have a hard job. We want you to know you have a hard job. We did the same thing to businesses where we took these Hershey bars that we just literally went and we went business to business around different parts of our community, and we just walked in and we said, thank you for investing in our community by having a business. We just want to say, awesome job. We did. We do wrapping paper blitzes. Buy the wrapping paper. And so for that, there's a level of planning. We buy the wrapping paper for the wrapping paper blitzes right after the Christmas of the year before. So we buy all the wrapping paper for the 2018 wrapping paper blitz after Christmas of 2017 because it all goes on sale. Then all you have to do is find somebody to store it, a place to store it, or whatever you do. So we send people go buy thousands of rolls of wrapping paper. When it's all discounted, it's all cheap, then we store it, we get it out, and we go the next year. Just having a vision and thinking through and all that stuff. It's fun, because anybody can pass out wrapping paper, right? I mean, and the people who are too afraid, you probably, if you can't pass them out wrapping paper, you probably can't tell someone about Jesus. You're probably too nervous. So you get loosened up a little bit by doing that. Yeah.
I've seen your staff and volunteers at different events before, and everybody's wearing a bright blue shirt.
Yep.
Can you explain that as part of your culture and process?
Yeah, so again, we wanted, when we're doing things that are going to serve, we wanted people to be easily identifiable to help. We also wanted to promote the snot out of community that we're doing this together. And then in a sense it became, if we're going to do this, let's attach the face to it. And so we give away these blue Grace Fellowship shirts, and everybody and their brother owns them, and most people own more than one. And So that's another place we've had to spend money to make that happen. We've, again, done that since we're small. But now people in the city know us. Like, so the cops will say, oh, it's just the church with the blue shirts. It's good. Just the church with the blue shirts. Or the fire department will say, you guys are the church with the blue shirts, right? This is something we need. Can you do it? Yeah. So it became like we wanted to call ourselves out at the events. We wanted to see that I could look around. Because it's amazing. And I could show you pictures on my phone. It's amazing, like before an event, when everybody's praying and there's like 300 blue shirts all in a room around a thing, getting ready to go do it. That sense of community and mission for that. And so that was the second part. And then it became we might as well let people know who we are. Again, not because we assume they're going to come to our church, but just a way to love them. Yeah. Any other questions around this? All right, I'm going to tell you one bad thing before lunch. All right, so this was a no bad decision that's rooted in a bigger issue. One of the worst decisions I ever made was I nominated, and then he got voted in, an elder out of pressure from other people. That I listened to the rabble and allowed myself to put a person in a position that I knew in my heart was not right, that wasn't ready, that wasn't good for us, but I allowed the pressure of the people to lead me more than God to lead me. And I bring that up to say, we have in our values something of don't make decisions based on fear. And I made that decision based on fear of what some other men were saying to me, based on perception of the conversation, of the congregation, based on saying, in this case, all of these men were older than me. And so I just said, well, they're older than me, they must know better. And they didn't know better, they were wrong. That elder, he didn't like end up causing problems or whatever. He served his term and ended up stepping off. But it wasn't good for our board, wasn't good for our church, wasn't good for me, wasn't good for where we needed to go. And it was a pressure because I had some people outside the church say your elder board's too small. And so all of that is to say, don't make decisions till you're ready. Don't make decisions that you don't feel the Lord's leading you to. Don't make decisions based on fear. Don't make decisions based on pressure of other people. The elder was the example I wrote down, but there's probably 4 or 5 really, really significant decisions that I would say I can look back over 13 years and say, I made that decision based on fear, and none of them were right. They were all wrong. I know we love people, and I know people's voices are loud, and I know we want to be inclusive in our decision-making and processes and all that, but if you don't feel led to do it, don't do it. If you don't feel like it's the right call for your team, don't make it just because other people are saying it. Being governed by fear will get you in a lot of trouble. And I was governed by fear sometimes where I made some decisions I regretted. And so the principle that we just talk about is this decision a decision that's being made by mission or a decision that's being made by fear? If it's a decision made by mission, it's the right decision. If it's a decision made by fear, it's a bad decision. God did not give us a spirit of timidity. Fear is something that is not of our Father. I mean, all these things are biblical realities. And there's a lot of pressure and a lot of voices and a lot of loud voices. And you have got to learn to make sure you're listening to the right voices and you're not being governed in a direction that is unhealthy. All right, so I'll pause. Culture of outreach, and then the issue of appointing an elder or being led by pressure. And I think that relates to what Jeff was talking about earlier. I had a lot of pressure sometimes not to do certain things or to do certain things as changes were being made around that. Any thoughts about those?
I think,
Go ahead. I'm pointing at you. Yeah. Go.
You just used, don't do it unless you feel led.
Yeah.
Would you define that? And then in the next sentence, unless it's on mission. So I'm going to put those two together and say,
Not missions unless it's on mission. Yeah. Is that yeah.
mission, right?
Yeah.
Mission. Who
Yeah.
you are as a church.
Yeah. So
Some people here feel led and think they must have a voice.
yeah. So one of the things I would say, led is a lot of things. I think led is, did God clearly tell me to do it? I don't need a debate about a Bible verse. God told me to do it biblically, I need to do it. So if that's confess my sin or confront a brother or whatever. So I need to quickly do what I've clearly heard. And if I've clearly heard something from a verse, I need to do it. I need to affirm in my soul what I believe God is telling me from other brothers and sisters I respect. So who are the people around me that are in spirit with me? Who are the people that when Paul and Barnabas were about to go, stood around them and said, this is a good call. Let's lay hands on these guys and pray for them. If no one had come to pray for them, it was probably a bad idea. Right? So I want to ask in my leadership, are the other godly people that are close to me hearing what I'm hearing, feeling what I'm feeling? And in that case, I didn't listen or even ask other godly people. I just listened to the other people. So I would say part of being led is God's word, God's spirit, my interaction person with God, but confirming that with the voices of people around me that are making sense. And then asking myself, is this decision true to who we are? Am I breaking ranks with something that has been pretty stable for who we are, pretty normal to our DNA? And in that case, I clearly was, on a lot of different levels. Is that? And then mission drives decision. Vision drives decision, not fear. So if your services are too close together and it's affecting your parking lot, I don't care how long you've been doing that. Change. It doesn't matter if the people are going to be bothered by it. We work really hard to say this. We're not going to live by the excuse of our people won't. We're instead going to replace that with we have not yet led them to. So it's not that our people won't, it's that we have not yet led them to. It's not that my children won't, it's that I have not yet led them to. And so we often don't make decisions on fear because even though we know the right decision for mission, making disciples, moving the gospel forward, is the change of this service time or is killing that thing, we don't make that change because we're afraid of how the people are going to react rather than saying, no, now we just have to lead them to that decision because it's the right decision for mission. So we have to ask, is this decision really going to help us help people live Jesus-centered lives? If it's not, then why are we doing it? And in this case, if I had stopped and done everything I just described in the last 2 minutes, there's no way that guy would have been voted to be an elder. None. He didn't make any sense, to be honest, for the mission of our church. And he didn't line up with some of our DNA and core values. And he wouldn't have been affirmed by other people I trusted. But I heard some pressure.
We all had that same guy on our boards. How did you help him while he was there? Or did you put out a contract on him?
No, I really made the decision that I didn't say this to him, but in my heart I said, I made this bed. I'm going to learn to sleep in it well. And so I gave him a little bit more TLC than I even gave some of the other elders. So I've talked with him more through things, more breakfast with him, more conversation with him, more patience. Sometimes having to go to the other guys on the board and redefine or interpret what he said to them and make sure we were all on the same page. So I tried to develop him as much as I could in a very personal way while being patient. And if he hadn't been ready to step off himself, I would have led him to step off. So. Other thoughts about pressure or what you're feeling or making decisions? Or getting around this? Yeah, that's it.
This is broader to the whole concept.
Yeah, go, man.
I'm just curious, as you've grown over the years, this has probably changed somewhat too, but personally, a lot of this takes organizational thinking, planning, praying
Yeah.
on your part.
Yep.
What does that look like in your schedule, and how's that changed over the years for you?
Yeah, so I heard a talk years ago, might have been a TED Talk or something, but they were talking about how, I think it was Google. Google had a day that they would have in their planning called a FedEx Day that was a part of their monthly calendar. And their FedEx Day was called FedEx Day because they were basically told, you're mailing it in that day. And you're mailing it in that you're not working on your normal job. You're trying to work on what's in front of you. You're trying to work on what you, not work in, but work on your stuff. And so I have tried to create weekly, monthly, and yearly opportunities for me to work on things that are in the future. So weekly, there is, it's only about 45 minutes to an hour that she didn't used to be my assistant, but now my assistant keeps off my calendar that is really for me for forward thinking on things that are going on, and those range. Monthly, there is a day with my executive pastor where we take an hour and he and I do that together. Okay, where he and I do that together. Then yearly, I have some various spaces that are in the rhythms of my life through some groups I'm connected to where I'm getting away for learning, development, and it's at those places that I often think about some of this stuff, in the hotel, whatever that's going to be. Am I answering your question? Another part of this is, what are the artificial deadlines that you need to create in your life to be able to keep you in front so that you're not always playing procrastination catch-up? So here's an example. I am right now working on the sermon calendar that I will give to our elders for all of 2018. Every October, I give our elders and teaching team the preaching calendar for 2008, the next year. It's in pencil. The Holy Spirit certainly can change it, and He does. But it is the getting in front of what that looks like for us to be able to go after that. That's an example where no one gave me that deadline. I created it artificially, and it keeps me in front to keep going after the stuff is front. And I do that with a variety of things. Those are some examples.
You make yourself accountable for that stuff to somebody, like, do you have any kind of formal relationship with the chair of your elder board or
Yep.
moderator or whatever, and you get evaluated
Yep.
annually? Can you talk through what
Yeah.
that looks like for
Yeah.
you?
So I've always worked for the elder board. That's who does my job review. They do my job review annually. We have an annual elder retreat, and my review is at that retreat. It's at that retreat where, let me rephrase. It's at that retreat where I give them my goals for the next year, and they talk about the evaluation of my goals from the previous year. Out of that conversation comes it's normally 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 with some of our lay elders, a meeting with me. And they talk with me about how am I doing personally, here's some professional things, all that kind of stuff. And they take it very seriously. They don't want to waste my time. They listen to where my heart is and if I'm overwhelmed or what's going on. But I've always worked with them, and we have I'll talk a little bit about it later, but we have a process of evaluations for all of our staff members. I go through that evaluation process. I get evaluated on the same 5 C's everybody else gets evaluated on within the things I'm supposed to do. Is that?
Yeah, that's good. Have you ever had a chance to bring Kelly in with you on any of that? Because some teams do that as much as a care team and as an evaluation.
Yeah, so there are certain times over the years where they'll say, hey, we just really want to know how Kel's doing, how the family's doing. And they'll say, hey, we want to let you know we're going to call her, and we're going to ask her these things. Or would you like to bring her in? And we've done both. We've done both. Yeah. And we have, for directors and above, we have a sabbatical policy. And so I had a sabbatical for 4 weeks last year. And part of what they wanted in that evaluation of that sabbatical was my wife's evaluation of some stuff. And so Kel and I took a cruise together, and while we were on that cruise, we did that, we worked through that, and then I literally gave them sort of the report of what Kelly said about the stuff they were interested in. And they value that. And my elders are phenomenal at being in my corner. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better spirit of those guys. It's been amazing. But yeah, and it's something I want their feedback. I really do. I've been with some of them long enough now that like the same sound bites are going to come up forever because it's my personality and their personality, and we sort of just joke when that part of the that part of the conversation is going to come up. But they're honest and they say hard things to me. Here's a great example. They said to me before my review 2 years ago, before my review last year, one of your goals, you need to lose 15 pounds. You're the leader of our team, and you got to be healthy, and this is what this means, and whatever that will help you, whatever that goes after. And so literally when I talked to him about my thing, I was like, guys, I lost 17 pounds this last year. Here's where I was, here's what it was. And they came to me and, held me to that. They want me to be healthy. They want me to run. They mandated 6 years ago that I wasn't allowed to preach more than 42 weekends a year because they wanted me to be able to do it for a long time. Things like that they're accountable to.
I don't think a lot of pastors ever get evaluated, quite frankly. And
Sure.
I think it's almost like an uncomfortable thing, and it's really unfortunate because it's tremendously beneficial.
It's very beneficial.
Yeah.
And you as the pastor or the leader have to be secure enough to be told what you need to be told.
I mean, formal evaluation, not formal
Oh,
evaluation.
yeah, true. Any others? Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much did you have to lead your elder board into having them evaluate you?
Yeah.
Did you bring it up initially
Yes, I did.
and tell them this is what you need from it?
Yeah, so when I got to Grace, there was no elder board. There was a on-paper leadership team that really wasn't super helpful, to be honest, at the time. So I instituted an elder board, got the first 3 elders and whatever. And when we talked about, one of the things was, in the Constitution that had been written before I got there, it said I reported them. And when I talked to them, I said, I'm asking for personal and professional development and what that means. It happened to be that of the 3 guys at the time, 2 of them that made a lot of sense to, and who they were going to be able to do that well. But yeah, and over the years, it's morphed to talk more about what that means. And what we're really after, and in terms of they'll ask me. So when I give them my goals, I give them professional goals, and then I give them personal goals. So like a personal goal a couple years ago, it wasn't recently. A personal goal a couple years ago was better bedtime habits with my children. And they said, what does that mean? And I said, well, it means I want to make sure that at least 4 nights a week I am sitting and talking with, at the time, Caden and Kaya before they go to bed, either praying with them, reading with them, or just checking on their heart. So when I did my review, they asked, how's that gone? And then they said, do we need to ask Kelly if what you just said is true? And I thought, you can, but I think she'll tell you it's true. But yeah, we had those kind of conversations where it's like, guys, I need you to help hold me accountable personally, professionally. So yeah, coaching them up on that. And then them coming back saying, hey, we want to add this to it. So last year they said, hey, we want to bring in an outside person to evaluate you on this. Is that okay? I was like, great idea. Great idea. Totally for it. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah.
I've got one. I know you mentioned the importance of date nights with your wife,
Yep.
kind of setting those apart.
Yep.
That's a scheduled time.
Yep.
This is completely dedicated to her. I'm just curious, what other kinds of maybe boundaries have you had to set? Because especially, when you're first starting out,
Yeah.
there's a lot that has to be poured in to really start to see growth and development and a vision expand to what it has today. So what kind of boundaries did you have to set starting out? How have those kind of changed into now as a larger context, and as things kind of morphed, you've got a stronger team that maybe picks up a lot more?
It's rare that I'm in a room and not asked this question. I'm going to say some things philosophically, but hopefully answer your question practically too. I think one of the things that I heard a lot from leaders and what the subtext was in Christian culture was, you're either going to be great at your job and a terrible parent, or you're going to be an awesome parent and terrible at your job. And I refuse to believe that's the way it could be. I refuse to believe it. And I made a decision where I said, wherever I am going to be. If I am at home, I am at home. If I am at work, I am at work. So in 13 years of preaching 4 times a weekend for a long time now, I almost never work on my message after I leave the office Thursday afternoon. Never. I less than a dozen times in 13 years have I worked on my message at home. I don't do it. I finish my message at the office. I don't look at it again until I go back on Saturday afternoon before I preach. When I am home, I am home. So I made the decision to say wherever I was going to be, I was going to be. Second thing I realized was, if I was going to be great at my job and great at being a husband and great at being a dad, I was going to be tired. That I was going to go to sleep and I was going to sleep well. Which meant I wasn't going to get a lot of time to be great at golf. I wasn't going to get a lot of time to do a lot of things that were purely leisure for me. I'm just not. Now, I'm not talking about not taking care of yourself, and I got up at the hotel and worked out this morning. Okay, so I'm not talking about that. You got to take care of yourself before you take care. But I expect to go to bed tired. I don't expect a ton of time to watch Monday Night Football. I just don't. I have 4 kids and a wife and a big church. I expect to be tired. Name Newt, right? And so all that is to say, one of my frustrations a lot of times in this conversation is people always want to say, well, you're going to have to pick, you're going to have to pick, you're going to have to pick. No, I'm going to choose it all. I'm just going to work my tail off at all of it. And then the person that's going to fall at the end, hopefully, is me. Like, I hope I'm going to struggle with the things I didn't get time to go do, okay? There's also the reality that balance is a myth. Balance is a myth. Nobody has balance, and you can't get balance. What you can get is rhythms. And what I work really hard to figure out is what's the rhythm of where we are in our organization and the rhythm of where we are personally. So there are certain seasons and rhythms in our organization that are going to beat the tar out of me more than other ones. And I just tell my family. So like, we're at the front end of an $8 million campaign at our church. Over the last month, I've done 70 one-on-one meetings with people in our church. Those are exhausting and time-consuming. I sat down with my 2 oldest kids and my wife in July, at the end of July, and I said to them, next month's going to be terrible. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be exhausted. This is what it's going to mean. This is what's going on. But sweetheart, Sweets, it's Kelly's nickname, Sweets, kids, this is what it means. This is what I'm going to do. Caden, I promise I won't miss any of your soccer games if I can in all of this. Okay, buddy? Kaya, promise I'll get to as many tennis lessons as I can in all this. Kelly, I promise you we will go away and get away. So first weekend of October, Kelly and I are going away to a resort for 5 days. Like, plan the rhythm, right? Run really, really, really hard. Now we're going to come and we're going to have a nice time together in rhythm. When we were building our first building as a church, I said to the kids, next month is going to be hard. I wasn't sleeping. I was tired. I was stressed out. And I said, kids, it's going to be really, really hard. But here's what I'm telling you. At the other end of that, we're going to go away to Kalahari for 2 days. It's going to be awesome. I need you to hang with me. And then what I do is I tell them what their sacrifices paid off. So here's a great example. Christmas Eve and Easter are just brutal. I preach like 6-10 services live, right? So I'll preach, be tired. I'll be gone for 2.5 days for doing that. And I'll sit down with my kids on Christmas Eve before they go to bed. And it makes me weep. And I'll look at them and I'll say, 200 people met Jesus this weekend because you guys sacrificed. Because Kelly, you held down the home, and kids, you were patient and you prayed. And I'll look at my kids and I'll say, you're investing in eternity by honoring Mom while I'm gone. And I promise you, and then in our church, we take the week after Christmas off. So I'm home the entire week. So I'm like, okay, for 3 days leading up to that, I'm going to be killing it. But when we get back, when I get done Christmas Eve, Daddy doesn't have to do anything for like 7 days, all in. And then we plan stuff, right? Like, it's the rhythm, not the balance. I'm always out of balance somewhere. I'm out of balance when I'm on vacation with work. I'm out of balance right on the other way. It's the rhythm that I'm looking at. But when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I'm doing vacation. I'm figuring that out. And then it's date nights, it's ball games, it's coaching. Like, I try to do all that stuff that I can. Every bit of it I can. I've coached my son in sports. I've been involved. I try to go to every game. My elder board's super flexible with me with what that looks like in terms of how I have to prioritize certain things. We have a policy on our staff. You can't carry over more than 3 vacation days a year, which makes people take their vacation, including me. So I got to take my vacation and make that go on. So these are all practical ways that are built in the fact that I'm not looking for balance. I'm looking for what the rhythm is. I'm making sure I love my wife. I'm checking on my wife's heart. Like, Kel, how are you right now? Am I wrong? I've gone to certain things that I won't take opportunities like this. I don't take them all. There are certain guidelines to which I have made decisions on what I'm going to do that's beyond Grace Fellowship. I used to sit on an international missions board. I stepped off of it. Like, I've had to say no to things to be able to buy back time. Am I getting to the heart of some of it? These practically, but philosophically, I've just said I'm going to go to bed tired. I just expect, I run hard at what I do. I run hard at home. I run hard. I cook more than my wife cooks. So a lot of times I come home from work and cook. I love to cook. So I come home from cook. And then I'll cook and homework's going on and practices are going on. And it'll be 9:30, 10 o'clock before I've been able to think what's in it for me. That's just the way it is. I have 4 kids. And I find a lot of pastors, the issue isn't that they're working too much or not home. The issue is they want to live for them still a bunch. They still want a bunch of them time. And I just have realized I can't have that. I gave up that right when I had kids and when I decided to do what I was going to do. And then some of it is you got to know yourself. You got to know your boundaries of what you have the capacity to do and say no. You know, God blessed me with a freakishly good memory. It's like really uncannily good. And the byproduct of that is there's certain things I don't need to prep for the way other people need to prep for them. I can remember numbers in a meeting more than other people can. And so like my ability to remember numbers allows me to not have to press into that as much. And that just gives me a little bit of margin back. It might be 5 minutes of margin or 10 minutes of margin, but that matters. Those add up, right? So knowing who you are and how that plays out. I take a vacation every year with my wife. Let me rephrase. I take a vacation every year as a family, and I take time away alone with my wife. 2 different environments every year. Make sure it's a reality. Work hard to date my kids, take my kids to special places, you know, different things, everything from my daughter's going to the Buckeye game with me this weekend. She's never been, so she's going to that. My son loves sports. He goes to games with me all the time, you know, all those kind of things. But what I would say is if you're really on purpose at your job, are you as on purpose at home as you are at your job? Do you schedule and plan out your home and what that looks like, you know, and how that is, and run after that hard? And I have people in my life who have permission to tell me if I'm out of balance. Being ridiculous in one way or the other is a better way to say it.